Hare Krishna, everybody. Welcome to the 10th episode of the Many Moons podcast. Today's session is entitled Lessons from 50 Years of Service, and we honestly couldn't find anybody more qualified and suitable to talk to you about this topic or discuss this topic than Mother Manjuali herself. She's not only the most incredibly humble, sweet personality I've honestly had the pleasure in meeting and encountering. But she's had a marvelous journey through to Bhakti that we felt would really benefit from sharing with everybody today. So, just to give you a little bit of background, on Mother Manjuali, for those of you that don't know her, she began practicing Bhakti Yoga in 1971, and she was initiated by Srila Prabhupada in May 1972 in Los Angeles. Then her and her late husband Jayatirtha Das was sent to England to manage the Krishna temple in 1976 by Srila Prabhupada himself. And this is now known as obviously the manor that many of you UK devotees would know. And Manjuali then worked for many years as a media librarian for the Times London. And then later she moved into the more quieter pastures in England, to the southwest of England. And she's worked in the field of psychotherapy and counseling for an educational awarding body, producing training films and other educational material. She's also, as we all know, very much a bhakti practitioner and is also active in interfaith dialogue and various environmental and social causes in her community. So we're really, really grateful and privileged to have you join us today. And I believe Mother Manjuali wants to share a little prayer before we get into our discussion. The floor is all yours, Mother.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you for the lovely welcome and for inviting me to be here today to share a little bit of the glories of Srila Prabhupada in my journey. And before we begin, I just wanted to just do a little prayer and a blessing for our time together today. So first, I'll offer the obeisances to my spiritual master, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vistaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Atanamane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatade Satarne Om Meganat Mandasya Ganakanas Lakaya Chaksu Ushnatantena Tasmai Shri Gurve. And in the silence now, we're coming from so many directions and all over the world. I just want to do a little prayer that brings us all together. So in the silence, we just hit the pause button and we just be present here together. And we ask our spiritual master, our gurus, guides, and guardians who support our spiritual journey to be present with us and to empower us and enliven us to actually meet in the place of sacred sound and to be able to share from the heart whatever the good Lord helps to bring us closer to Him. So, Hare Krishna, glories to Srila Prabhupada. Okay, so a little prayer, and in that prayer, we also give gratitude to those that have taught us on the path of devotion. And I especially remember my god sister today, Jamuna, who is beyond, but who was very influential in my spiritual journey and taught me so many things and continues to teach me. And we're all together in this Krishna consciousness movement, and we're helping each other to actually try to love God. And that's the journey, is love of God, self-realization. So you're going to be asking me some questions today, and I'm going to really pray that I can share with you whatever is appropriate to support and to serve my Guru Maharaj, who actually asked us. Now, I have taught you, you teach others. Whenever we did something nicely, he always said, we now teach others. So that's why I actually agreed to come and speak with you today, because we have a duty to share, and in sharing we enrich our own journey, but we also really honor our Guru Maharaj and the path of bhakti that is so dear to him, and he wants it to go all over the whole world, so that's me. Okay, carry on, ask me some questions.
Hare Krishna, Mata. We're very grateful that you have given your precious time to join us tonight. I remember I saw you at Bhaktivedanta Manor 2018. I think it was Srila Prabhupada's appearance day, if I remember correctly. And various of Srila Prabhupada's disciples were making their offerings to Srila Prabhupada. And I remember actually, even before you spoke, I saw you, sitting with the other senior devotees, and I was really just amazed, because you seemed like such an effulgent person in your beautiful, beautiful white attire. And at that point in time, I had a desire, to spend time with you and get to know you, but it wasn't really appropriate on that day to just kind of approach you out of the blue. So I'm really grateful that you're here. And I'm very curious to learn more about your journey. So I was thinking we can start right at the beginning. We know you've been practicing devotional service for 50 years, and that means you met the devotees back in 1971. So could you share with us, how did you meet the devotees? You've mentioned Mother Yamuna, but maybe you met other devotees before you met her.
Actually, I was at university in Chicago, and I dropped out. Well, I went to Woodstock, didn't I? We were and actually, I thought, oh, I'll just go, and because I was kind of bored with my course. I was doing art and English, and I thought, oh, I'll just go and find out what the purpose of life was. What is the meaning and purpose? What are we doing here? And so I had a journey that took me traveling to Woodstock, and then I went back to live there, and then I lived in other communities, searching for, what life was all about. Where was I supposed to be, and what did, God, looking for a spiritual master, what did God want of me in this lifetime? And about a year later, after that, after traveling, I came to Chicago to visit my family. There was something that I had to go back for, and I got ill when I got there. And so I was a month in the hospital with hepatitis from drinking bad water. And I remember when I came out, I was okay. And I went down to Old Town in Chicago. And there was a little storefront, a Hare Krishna temple. It was just storefront in Old Town on Halsted Street. It was the first Krishna temple in Chicago. And I was going to go back to the West Coast, but I just met Balalasva and the devotees down there. And they invited me to come in, and I began chanting, and I just loved the chanting. And so that drew me in. But, and then the temple was, it was a tiny little temple. It was only a few brahmacharis there and a grahasta couple. And financially, they were, it was really, they weren't making it. And it was so cold, they didn't have money to put the heat on. So Tulsi Devi came to my mother's house. And so I had some service to bring Tulsi home to my mom's house. And one of the rooms upstairs, we made a little Tulsi room. And so she thought I was really mad because I was walking around this ringing bells. They wrote out the mantra very phonically for me so I could, Yani Kani Chapapani, and the prayers to Tulsi. And so for about a month, I looked after Tulsi in my mom's house. And then it got to the point that the temple was going to close and they were all going to go to Detroit. And I didn't want to go to Detroit, to the big city. So they went to, the temple closed, and I went to California. and hitchhiked to California. And I visited temples all up the coast, Portland, where Dohnavir was, and then Seattle, and up and down. I would just visit temples, but I wasn't ready to come in yet. I love the chanting, but I just didn't find the place that was my place. And that, I felt I'd go, I'd do some service, and then I'd go back to a commune and cook for everybody. So, it was just like I was still searching. I wasn't captured. And then actually in the end of 71, when I was up and down the coast of the west coast of America, I went to Santa Barbara Temple, and Akuti and Dina Bandhu were. Dina Bandhu was the temple president. Akuti, obviously, was dear Akuti was temple president too. Really, they were doing it together. But and they said that oh, Prabhupada was going to come to LA. And do you want to see the big deities? Because all the temples just had little, Jagannath or Mahaprabhu, Chaitanya, and they'd have a picture of Radhalandeshwar on the altar, but there were no big deities. But in Los Angeles, there was Rukmini, Dwarkadish, Radha Krishna, the big deities. So they brought me to Los Angeles. And I went in the Brahmacharini ashram, and I had a whole backpack full of books. I was carrying a Lao Tzu, the Aquarian Gospel, the Bible, the I Ching, all these books, and Be Here Now. My whole backpack was full of books, and the first thing they did was dispose of all my books. And then they said, and then they gave me a sari, and took away all my my Chinese jacket and my hippie shoes and everything. And we had a pile of saris, and the girls would wear whatever was in the pile, and the brahmacharinis wore pink or yellow, or pink or saffron, and the grahastas had yellow. And we divided our time between working in the incense factory, going on Harinam, and supporting the deity worship by, cutting veggies and stuff like that. But and in the Brahmacharini room, then there were 28 of us in one room with one bathroom.
Oh, wow.
And so it was really cozy. And you had to put your sleeping bag out before evening arti, because otherwise you'd end up by the bathroom, So it was a really amazing experience. But the temple in Los Angeles was vibrant. It was the biggest temple in the movement at that time. There were 75 devotees in one temple. And it was the hub for the book distribution was really big. And also there was wonderful Harinam. They would go to Hollywood Boulevard and chant down, by Hare, and they would be, they would, and everybody, the whole temple went on Sankirtan on Saturday, distributing books to all the shops and malls, and we went in teams, took our lunch out, and everybody. And another thing is, everybody went to Mangal Arti, the whole temple. Everybody went to evening arti and danced, the dancing was like amazing. And everybody attended class, morning and evening class. So that was the foundation. There was a regulated program, and there was association of those who were joyful in Krishna consciousness. And I just loved it. When I went to Los Angeles, I just like the lights went on. This is where I'm supposed to be. After a couple of years of being on the road, just looking for, my place. So that's just a little idea of Los Angeles. And then Srila Prabhupada did come. and we got the association of Srila Prabhupada, and that was another, peak experience actually to meet a saint, a true saint. And Srila Prabhupada, when he came to Los Angeles, we all met, and I was helping in the temple room, and I remember they said, he's coming, he's coming. We all hit the floor. And then I was just at the front. I remember looking up and seeing his feet walk by, and they were golden. And, this is not just sentiment, but it was, the blessing of our master, and to meet his feet, and then to look up and see this actually effulgent personality who was carrying Krishna. And he was carrying Krishna so selflessly with full conviction and deep love. And that just captured us. So that's a little nutshell.
Thank you so much, Mata. That was wonderful hearing your memories, and I could, in my mind's eye, see a lot of what you shared with us. Just one thing that stood out to me is that you mentioned how you had this attraction to Krishna consciousness, and you liked chanting, but it took you some time to find the right place for you to become fully immersed. So I found that interesting. I think for devotees as well, it sometimes takes time to find the place, the place, whether that's the Sangha, whether that's the service, whether that's the specific community. But I think that is an important theme almost in a devotee's life, to also give yourself that time
Yes,
and
and
to.
carry on. And in Chicago, we went to we didn't have Tulsi beads then, but we went to the craft shop and bought some pine beads, which I still chant on. And so I got these beads, and these beads traveled with me for the year and a half before I actually joined the temple. And every day, I wasn't chanting 16, but every day I would chant and on these beads. And I felt that that was, as we chant, we become more purified, and we invite Krishna to come close, because we are actually chanting his name. And that is, as you said, just having the beads and not actually living in a temple, but actually taking shelter of the name in our desperate, where do you want me to be? Please give me a spiritual master. And, the beads, actually, the holy name drew me in. So thank you.
Before we go on and talk about your relationship with Srila Prabhupada, one thing you mentioned about how you had Tulsi Dev in your mum's spare room, just walking around trying to do the service, reminded me when we spoke, when we first met, when we spoke, you mentioned how you have a habit of, taking religious memorabilia. You had rather the Giri Govardhan in Radha Landaneshwara that we worship around, that traveled through your suitcase for many a years. So I'm seeing a little pattern there.
Well, actually, Giri Govardhan came because when my husband took sannyas, it was really challenging. And he had a Giri Raj, and he said that Giri Raj would help me. That if I put Giri Raj in the center, I wouldn't miss my husband so much. And so Giri Raj went to India with me, went to America with me, and he's on the altar at Soho Street. But he traveled, he went up to Badrinath.
Oh.
Very lucky Giraj indeed. But also you very briefly touched upon your encounter where you actually met Srila Prabhupada, because I remember this is something I think I was listening to something over the weekend, and you mentioned how the devotees actually told you Prabhupada's already there, but kind of he wasn't there, but got you into the ashram. And then you obviously, this moment you describe where you were sort of on the floor and suddenly you saw these golden feet, as you just mentioned. And I suppose that was that moment when you almost the moment that somewhat cemented your journey into a life of bhakti, and particularly a life of serving your spiritual master. Can you just explain to us how, at what point, obviously that was a very poignant moment where you first met Prabhupada, but at what point did you think, okay, this is my Guru Maharaj, I am going to serve this Guru Maharaj, and that you're going to take that path of bhakti? Because it was very quickly, you then got initiated in 1972 and had your second initiation within, was it 3 months or so, wasn't it? So it was a very quick journey. So how did that very fast tracked, we, some of us are looking for a guru for God knows how long, but how did that escalated journey happen where you completely surrendered to Prabhupada?
There's this lovely quote, sloka in Bhagavad Gita 4:34. Tadvidi pradipatena paripasnena sevaya upadekshanti te janinas tattvadarshana. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized soul can impart knowledge because he has seen the truth. Yeah, that's actually, that sloka traveled with me because I was looking for my spiritual master, and I love the Bhagavad Gita, and that sloka just really, when I saw Srila Prabhupada, I just knew that he was my guru, and that and we were part of the movement where it wasn't like we had personal association so much, not like in the early days when they were just a small group. There were a lot of devotees in Los Angeles. And actually, we were really happy just to be in the background. We didn't have to have personal association with Srila Prabhupada. We were Team Prabhupada. And Team Prabhupada meant that we were absorbed in pleasing him and helping him to do his work in the world. And that was a great honor and a challenge sometimes as well, to actually put ourselves aside and just dive into that ocean of devotion. And because of community and the team working together, we supported each other, and we were learning so many new things. Actually, we learned to cook. We learned to dress deities. We learned to cook. First, I started sewing, and I worked in the deity room sewing. And then from sewing, it was doing the fruit offering. And then from doing the fruit offering, it was, and then I got Brahmin initiation after 3 months because I was keen. And I was, and I really was blessed to be with such wonderful devotees. And they needed somebody to dress the deities. And I said, I'll do it. Because I was enthusiastic to take my practice deeper and to be of service where I was needed. And Srila Prabhupada just allowed me to do that. And it's just like we have to, it takes effort to move in Krishna consciousness. It takes effort to do anything in the world. And it takes enthusiasm, and it takes deep prayer. And all those things you have to kind of work through. We pray for service. We pray for service when we chant the holy name, when we do our japa. And we pray for service when we serve our deities, when we read the books. Everything in Krishna consciousness and in a bhakti practitioner's life is done prayerfully and with intention. It's not whimsical. It's it has, and that intention is not is driven by a humble sense of, please, I am not worthy to do this, but by your grace, maybe I'll be able to please you. And that is what we learn through our Shastra. and through having the association of those that have a taste. It infects our taste. It encourages our taste to go deeper. And we all know that this life is moving quickly, and the clock is moving. And as our dear Shuti Dharma from Bhaktivedanta Manor, who's dancing with Mahaprabhu in the spiritual world, always said, that, give one life to Krishna. And if we have an opportunity to do that, and we have the grace and strength to meet the challenges, and not everyone has challenges, it's the nature of this realm. But if we have a prayerful attitude and an enthusiasm to be of service, then Krishna reciprocates. Because Krishna consciousness is about love of God. It's about a relationship with our Master, and a relationship with the Holy Name, and a relationship with the Lord and the Lord's devotees. So how do we manifest our life and dedicate our life? It's every morning when we wake up, we bow our heads and we say, please, please. Every day we rededicate ourselves. And that's what a bhakti practitioner does. Yeah. Every day we chant our rounds. Every day we follow our schedule. And that's why 50 years on, I'm still here doing the practice because I made a promise, and because it's my duty, but not because it's a dry thing, because there's Krishna magic. It's not, it's just, what we give, we receive so much more. And that's why I'm here today, is because we can't be misers. The Prabhupada wanted us to go out to the world and to show that the science of Krishna consciousness is a viable path to love of God. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Just one thing you touched upon, obviously, for a person as humble as you are, I'm sure, you surrendered quite easily onto your Guru Maharaj. So, however, you said it wasn't without challenges. So, can you maybe touch upon any challenges you had to overcome? Because, you mentioned the ashram situation, living in a very, not the most comfortable conditions, but apart from the physical sort of logistical concerns, or including any logistical concerns, what were the challenges you had to overcome in fully surrendering onto your spiritual master?
Well, actually, in the early days, I had to give up all my books, didn't I? You can see I have books. I had to just kind of let go of my own desire to drive my life and actually
Mm.
dive into the program. And and that actually, I didn't have a problem with that, because I was always a team player. I was the oldest of 6 kids, and I was always with people, so that wasn't a problem. But there was no time for a walk by the beach, or no time for anything else. We were set percent 24/7 doing devotional service. And actually, we're creatures of habit. And we get into, at first, you would just think, oh my God, this is pretty far out, 24/7. But actually, after you get into the rhythm of it, it just becomes, it's like breathing, you're doing your service. And you have your regulated program. And do you know what's helped me throughout that, when challenges come, and the big challenge in life is the mind. The mind can be our best friend or worst enemy. And to actually, and the mantra helps to control the mind. And when we chant our japa, we chant it with our breath. We chant it, in the old days, they used to say, Krishna's dancing on your tongue. And and actually the challenge is, just letting go of everything you thought would make you happy, or searching for this. When I came to Krishna consciousness, it just ticks so many boxes that those things that, a walk by the seaside it just, it didn't matter so much because we were being fed. We got the juice, and the juice was to be in association with our master, to be in association with the devotees, to be absolutely doing something that was of value, because it was uplifting society. It was sharing Krishna's name. And that was so much more rewarding, than any of the negatives of the me and mine that, I want to go for a walk and see the sea. I let go of that because it wasn't a top priority. And I think in the old days, it was really tight. We had a really full schedule and we just did it. And we got joy doing it. Yeah. And sometimes, there'd be niggly things, personality stuff, but ultimately stuff doesn't really matter when you're actually trying to serve your spiritual master. And you just have to be silent sometimes and just accept that, we all have our joys and our challenges in incarnation. We all have our good qualities and our room for developments. And that is, I guess, and we have to have that philosophical edge too, that ultimately that's all temporary. We're going for the long haul, the long one. And that is love of God. That is devotional service. That is, association with the saints.
Thank you, Sharadi. I believe you've got some questions about Mataji's time in London or England, so to speak.
We can't hear you.
Sharadi, you're on mute.
Hare Krishna. So before we get there, I actually wanted to ask you if you would be willing to share the memory you've got with Srila Prabhupada before or around the time of your wedding. I have read that memory and I found it I found it
Me
very
too.
beautiful. But I thought it might be good if you can share it, some more devotees can hear it. Because why I'm asking you, because I've also heard another devotee speak about the same time and the same experience, and they had, they interpreted like what Prabhupada had said in such a different way. And then when I heard you tell it, and then I saw that, you saw Prabhupada's humor in the situation and Prabhupada's love for you. For me, that was very revealing. So do you mind sharing that story with us?
Okay. So I got first initiation on Nisringadev's appearance day, 72.
Mm.
I got second initiated on Balaram's appearance day, 72. And I got married on October the 1st, 1972. So that
Wow.
was a really busy year for me 50 years ago. And my marriage was arranged. My husband was the temple president in Los Angeles, and I came out of the deity house, or the deity room, not the deity room, the sewing room, and he said, "Can I have a word with you?" I came out, and I remember there was this big jade plant out there, and he said, "I have a question for you. Do you want to get married?" And I thought he was going to marry me off to one of the brahmacharis, and I said, "Oh." And I was like a newbie still, wasn't I? I wasn't even there 6 months, or no, I was there 9 months, 10 months, 9 months. And and then I asked who, and he said, who did you have in mind? I said, and he said, myself. And I said, well, I have to think about it. Can I have 24 hours? And then he said, well, I guess so. And then on the night, I went and sat on my sleeping bag all night and really prayed to Krishna. that, oh my God, I've come for you, Krishna, and now I'm being asked to get married. And what do you want of me? And I just sat up all night, just really praying. And I got real clarity. It would be good for your spiritual life. So the next day, 24 hours later, I said, okay, I'll get married. And I had never spoke to him before, except for what
Wow.
the Didi's wearing tomorrow.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
So I never spoke, but I got real clarity that Srila Prabhupada was just calling me to surrender again. And he said, okay, so next Saturday in 1 week's time, we would be
Wow.
getting married. So, and I just said, so you have to cook a feast, make a kurta, make a bead bag, and find a sari. And so lovely Nandarani, Dayananda's wife, helped me to do that. And I remember I went out, we used to do a collect call to my mom once every few weeks. And I rang my mom up and said, oh, Mom, by the way, I'm getting married on Saturday. She said, can I come? She was in Chicago and I was in Los Angeles. So I asked Jaitirtha and we got her a ticket and she came. And so anyway, the marriage went through. We had the marriage and it was in a garden, Dayananda and Nandarani's garden, just down the road from the temple, because at that time some of the devotees weren't following through on their vows, and Prabhupada said, no, we'll get married in the garden and then come and see me. So so we got married, and at that time Prabhupada was giving that around the 26th of September, I think there's one lecture when Srila Prabhupada is speaking about his own marriage, and he's speaking about a woman as an obstacle to a husband, an obstacle in the sense, a beautiful woman is an obstacle in a man's path to Krishna because she'll distract him. It's Krishna Seva. So that was the backstory. So anyway, we had the wedding. We went into the garden in Los Angeles, a wonderful garden. Chaitanya Singh had made this a wonderful Vyasasan, and there was an archway over Srila Prabhupada's. You've probably seen it in the photographs of Los Angeles with yellow roses over his Vyasasan. And I remember standing in the door. We had a plate of prasadam for Srila Prabhupada and a glass on there. And we stood at the door. We kind of came in, and Prabhupada was sat, and there were a couple of other devotees. I think Bhakti Sarup Damodar was there. A couple of other devotees were there. And Prabhupada looked up, and he looked up at the door, and then he looked at Jaitirtha, and then he looked at me, and he said, oh, she's beautiful. And I went, oh my God, in my mind, I went, oh no, I'm an enemy already. And then Srila Prabhupada he was just like almost winking when he said it. It was like his eyes got big, and I just saw that he was just a father. He was just really affectionate and really kind of playful with us too, in the sense that, because in the temple room it was really strict and everything, Prabhupada was a very serious person, but at that moment in time, I saw his humor and his oceanic smile. And then he had us come and sit right by him and kind of sat back a little bit. He said, oh, come closer. And we sat right there at Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet. And we gave him the prasad and we put it on the table, and he had already eaten, so he wasn't going to take, but he said, I'll have the drink. So he took the drink and he put the cup in his hand, and you remember always his finger would be up, and he just took a drink and savored it, took another drink and savored it. Then he looked at Jaitirtha and said, and she can cook. And then it was like, oh my God, you might be an enemy, but if you're cook, you're okay. It was like, oh my God. And then Srila Prabhupada just asked about my mother and my father and my parents in Krishna consciousness, because then there were some devotees whose parents were really upset when they became devotees. And Prabhupada wanted to know what my parents thought about Krishna consciousness. And my father was in Europe then, but my mom, she had come, and she had given me a check for my darshan, or my wedding gift. It was $50. And so I handed Srila Prabhupada my check. Uh, that was my wedding gift, and I gave it to him. And I said, this, my mother gave me this, and I give this to you. And many years later, my mother in America, you get your checks back. And I have that check on my altar with A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada written on the back, for the payment of, for the account of A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. So that was another reciprocation that happened. I gave him the check, and the check came back to me. And it did, and that is Krishna's and Prabhupada's grace. Prabhupada, he asked about family, and then he said one really wonderful thing, because he knew that I didn't know Jai Tirtha. And he said to me, attachment comes through service. If Krishna is in the center, your marriage will be successful. Keep Krishna in the center. And actually, when I was married, we never had arguments. We were a team. We worked really well together. And, he had to take sannyas after 8 years of marriage. And that was a challenge. We speak about challenges in Krishna consciousness. And that was a huge challenge for me as a young girl of 32 with a 4-year-old, having to actually step back from my service and allow this this drama to play out, and to still keep my faith. And that actually was Prabhupada's grace. So that's the story. But Prabhupada, he was affectionate. He spoke to us as well, and he gave us his blessing. And the blessing of a saint is no small. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mother Manjuali, for sharing that story. It was really inspiring to hear, and something which really stood out to me from this story, but from also what you shared before, is I think you, as you said yourself, you're really a team player, and you were very willing, to cooperate with the devotees. I think that is something we often struggle with. So I appreciated that point that you made, and it did seem that because of the sincere desire you had to serve, you were quite surrendered. I mean, like for me to imagine, like, someone asking me to get married and then, needing to respond within 24 hours, it's like, I can't like conceive of that. But, you just had that faith that if you prayed to Krishna, he would reveal, to you the right path, and then you went through with it. So that was really, really beautiful for me. And we also know that later Srila Prabhupada asked you and your then husband Jayatirtha Prabhu to go to the UK, although you are originally from the US. So we're curious, could you share something about that experience? I mean, the willingness to go, and also, moving and, doing new service in England.
Okay, so this was 1976. And during the Mayapur festival in 1976, my husband had gone to Mayapur in 76 in March. And he went about the 1st of March. And I was expecting a baby any day. And I had a baby on the 8th of March. And so there were no phones. So we had to, Romeshwar was going, Romeshwar Prabhu was going. And so he was supposed to tell Jai Tirtha that he was having, that he had a son. Anyway, 3 days later, apparently, he found out. But what happened was when Jai Tirtha was in Mayapur for the festival, he was actually the GBC of Los Angeles by this time. And he and England needed some support on the management side. Srila Prabhupada recognized that Bhaktivedanta Manor was an amazing venue for Krishna's preaching, and that actually Jai Tirtha had a real flair for design and for creativity and for actually bringing teams together to create community. And so Srila Prabhupada asked Jai Tirtha to move to England and take up becoming GBC of England. And so he came back to Los Angeles when Vaishnav Charan was 1 month old and said, in 2 weeks, we're moving to England.
Wow.
And we just had a little apartment. We just, didn't have a lot of stuff. But in 2 weeks with my month-old baby, I was moving. And so we just got rid, just shared the paraphernalia that we had in our household, packed a couple of suitcases, and arrived at Bhaktivedanta Manor with my 6-week-old baby on my front pack and a couple of suitcases. And we moved into above the stables was a brahmachari, was a grahasta ashram, and all the grahastas just had one room, and we all shared a bathroom. And there were like 7 families that lived in one space, and we just had a room, and which was fine. We were on site, and so we actually, by Jai Tirtha's grace and by Prabhupada's grace, Prabhupada said that if we came to England and got things going, that he would come. So we had like 2 months or 3 months to, let's see, we went in March, April, June, I think Prabhupada came. So we had a couple of months to paint the temple. And I remember my husband went out and we went to a cloth shop and bought this big roll of velvet. And my husband said, told the others, my wife is going to make all the curtains in the temple room with my newborn baby. And I managed. And and that was just, we got people to do it together, and we just up and down ladders, and we had the devotees putting wallpaper up and putting floors down and rewiring, and went and bought furniture, and it was so exciting, and it was so wonderful, and Prabhupada was coming. And what was the reason for living? To please Srila Prabhupada. And so we had a project, and we had the wonderful devotees at Bhaktivedanta Manor that actually, they thought, oh no, the Americans are coming to take over. And we just had to go in there and think, no, we're just coming to actually please Srila Prabhupada and to support each other in coming closer to Krishna and in serving. And that's what we did. We just created teams to do the job. And Prabhupada came, and he was so pleased. And so many new devotees joined, because the atmosphere was surcharged with service and the holy name. And that was, it was, and then we created the Sankirtan teams and the mothers' parties, and, they took the templates from America for the Bhakti program and the Bhaktin program, and the training programs began, and everything just kind of, it just moved really fast. But Gopalakulananda were in the center, and Srila Prabhupada was in the center, and the service was, he directed us, he empowered us, and we just wanted to please him. Okay.
Thank you so much, Mata. Again, I'm really struck by the things that you and some of the first devotees were willing to go through. You kept that higher goal in mind. I mean, living in a room with 7 other families with such a small baby, and then
And no,
still doing service.
every family had their own room, but we all shared. We all queued up for the shower. It was one shower with 7
Mm,
families, and yeah,
mm,
and we put the kids in the tub, and we looked after each other's children. It was, it was like a
mm,
community. It was really
mm,
community, and that's
mm,
how we cooked the offerings, and that's how we dressed the deities, as we looked after each other's children. And Mother Jagannatri, who's still looking after the
mm,
children at Bhaktivedanta Manor, she,
mm.
we all work together. Ruchira, so many wonderful devotees. Just yeah, we just looked after each other's children, and we just did the needful. There was no time
Mm.
to waste. Prabhupada set the schedule, and the offerings had to go on. And the Sankirtan had to go on in parallel. The book
Mm.
distribution was really hard. And,
Mm.
the study, the classes, everybody went to classes.
Mm.
We couldn't be lazy.
I think one thing that's becoming clear is that it is possible to go through the challenges, the austerities, and do such great service for Prabhupada because there was community
Yeah,
and because the devotees were at this mentality of we're in this together. As you said earlier, like you didn't need to have like a personal darshan of Prabhupada necessarily because you felt you were on team Prabhupada.
absolutely. Team Prabhupada. And there was so much joy being on Team Prabhupada. It wasn't
Mm.
boring. Every day we had, targets to meet, and we had,
Mm.
and, it's not just sentimental, but actually, and we look back maybe with rose-colored glasses sometimes, because the nature of the mind finds the things that brought us joy. But actually, it was a special time, and we were
Mm.
very blessed to be there. And we are very blessed to be here today, because actually the past informs our present, you know? And the past
Mm.
is, so many devotees have done so much in the past that has actually been a foundation for the movement at this point in time. And it wasn't like it was a massive sacrifice. It was like
Mm.
we had a reason for being. We had purpose in life. And why did I say at the beginning? That's what I was looking for, meaning and purpose in life,
Mm.
with God in the center. And Krishna
Mm.
consciousness gave that,
Mm.
by
That's
Prabhupada's grace and Mahaprabhu's grace.
so beautiful. Mata, one more question, but you can let us know if you're willing to share this or not. You mentioned that 1972 was quite a busy year for you. First initiation, second initiation, then you got married as well, and then you just shared that in 1976 you went to the UK, and you mentioned that you were only married for 8 years, and then your husband was asked to take sannyas. And from what you also shared, it seemed that you did have a happy marriage. And you
Mhm.
were saying you kept Krishna in the center, and Prabhupada had given you that instruction that love comes through service. And you said that when your husband took sannyas, it was very challenging, and I can completely understand that because you also had a small child and you were fairly young, and yourself only 32. So are you willing to share with us? I'm just curious, like what was going through your mind? Like, I mean, for me, I would be devastated. Like at that
Well,
age.
I got the call. It wasn't like sannyas these days that they prep for 5 years. I had a week. you know
Wow.
and it was, my husband was going through a challenging time. um he was going through a challenging time, and this was a remedy, um
Mm.
that his godbrothers thought would actually support him in his challenge. And his challenge was, yeah, he was having It was a lot of pressure on these young people.
Mm.
He was 29 when he became a guru.
Wow.
And Prabhupada left. It was the day Prabhupada left, the day after his 29th birthday. And we were just young, and we all had dramas to play. And I just, personally, it was devastating. It was challenging because I had to give up my service, and my service of being a team player with my husband, but
Mm.
also had to leave the manor. I was sent to Los Angeles, with my suitcase and my kids, and I had to just meet that challenge. And luckily I got to stay with the wonderful Rukmini, who's my dear god sister. Yeah, and I just, we are resourceful. And I loved Rukmini Dwarkadish. I used to dress Rukmini Dwarkadish and Srila Prabhupada. I have so many stories of, and that's how, when I dressed, once Prabhupada was pleased, and he called upstairs, and he really, and that was the most intimate time, other than my marriage with Srila Prabhupada, other than getting my Gayatri and getting told off for going on the cracks instead of the path. But, and Prabhupada, I really felt that he didn't abandon us. And actually, I think it was challenging, and it brought me to a place where I had to find the resources within myself through prayer, through japa, and through surrender, because actually I was told. My husband, they got on the phone and said, "Oh, Prabhupada wants your husband to take sannyas." Well, I mean, that's a big one, isn't it? You know? And you can say yes or no. And if Prabhupada wants it, yeah, it's yes, isn't it? Prabhupada wants it. But, I was just young, and I didn't challenge, and I didn't know if it would really solve the problem. And ultimately, it didn't solve the problem. But ultimately, I had to, I was tested. Krishna was kind. He gave me the resources to meet that test.
That's a very powerful story. And I remember when you spoke as well, you mentioned, following that, you then moved to London and you were, working at the newspaper, at the Times, and you were juggling, looking after your son, being a single parent while still keeping your daily practice. And you mentioned to me, actually, I remember when we spoke, that having that day, establishing that daily practice was one of the cornerstones, the bedrock of you, being able to sustain your bhakti practice. So how did you go about doing that? Can you just enlighten us? Because you worked, as a single parent, and you said how you came back home late and you were then putting the deities to sleep, and you
Yeah.
really sustained that, practice throughout all the trials and tribulations. So how did you establish the daily practice and b sustain it? What made you keep going? And because I personally, if I was 32 and had a young kid, and my husband decided to take sannyas, glorious issue, but I don't think I could then carry on and actually also sustain your practice whilst being a single parent, because it's very difficult, and you didn't let the standard slip. You looked after the deities.
Yeah, well, what happened is in 1982, Jai Tirtha left, and went across the river to Sridhar Maharaj, and the GBC Bhakti Charu Swami actually went to, took us to Sridhar Maharaj, and just for some guidance, because Jai Tirtha was having some difficulty. And so I went back with him for a couple of months to try and help him um, to, work through exactly what, was the best way forward. And then the GBC sent us to Bhakti Churus came to Puri, where we were, and brought us to Sridhar Maharaj, Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj, the wonderful godbrother of Srila Prabhupada. And Sridhar Maharaj decided that, because my husband was a sannyas, and he had disciples, that he should keep his sannyas. So he said that, so he gave him back his sannyas to try to help him. And I was sent away again to Mayapur and then back to England. And then I found this whole challenge of, the administration changed in the UK, and I didn't feel comfortable here. And I went to work with Atreya Rishi in San Francisco for some time. And then I came back to England, and I decided that I would just have some time for me. And I went to Sridhar Maharaj's mat, and he said my son should go to school, and my home should be my temple. So I was with their ashram for a little while, and then I just had Giri Raj. Another little Giri Raj came to me in 1984, and he's still with me. He still puts up with me. Little Choti Giri Raj, Sridhar Maharaj named him Brajabalava Maharaj, and he's just my Lord. And so I had Krishna, and I just got a job, and Krishna Prabhupada got me that job, and I worked my way up, and I did it for 14 years, almost 15 years, working in a national newspaper undercover and bringing in prasadam. And and going to India and just telling them I'm going to India, and not, and really living undercover, really, as a Hare Krishna devotee in the media world, and distributing prasadam. And so I became a team player there, and I did that, and then I moved to the West Country, and I got another job working in counseling and psychotherapy, which I was interested in. So my home became my temple. My home was my ashram, and I had a regulated program. When it's hard when you're doing shift work down here. When I was in the West Country, I didn't have to do shift work, but when you work in the media, it's shift work. Sometimes you have to be in the office at 6 a.m. Sometimes you do the night shift and you go in at 9 o'clock at night and you finish at 7 a.m. And because it's an international organization, this was before the internet, so journalists would be calling in from all over around the world, and they wanted stats, they wanted cuttings, they wanted, and you'd have to fax information around the world to journalists. So it was a big responsibility. I learned a lot of things, but it was like I was living a parallel life. I was actually, ultimately, I was paying for my son to get education, and I was living simply, and I was doing my practice. And I think the only way that I was able to sustain that practice was having regulated practice and making a promise to Krishna that, some days, he had to manasa puja, you do the mind puja, but you chant the rounds. And some days it wasn't 16 rounds, but, Sridhar Maharaj said at least 4. And, you have to just make do and manage your world, but keep your focus that Krishna, he puts us in different situations to test us, but also to draw closer to us. And that is the magic of Krishna consciousness. That is the blessing of Krishna consciousness, is that challenges, Queen Kunti, what did she pray for? Challenges. I don't pray for challenges. She was in another caliber, but, challenges, you have to have an active prayer life as well. I found that's been my mother's mantra. I always say when I grew up was never underestimate the power of prayer. And prayer is being, and it's not about, dear Lord, please give me bread. It's about, dear Lord, please empower me. Please make me love you. Please empower me to serve you. Please help me to serve my spiritual master. Because by asking we open the channel for grace to actually descend. It's grace is there. Grace is always there. It's just hovering. But by asking, then the grace showers. And that shower is what sustains us and helps us. And then another thing that helped us, the association of those of our friends, our devotee friends. And I know in the Srimad Bhagavatam we were reading today, Prahlad, no friends, no enemies. But ultimately, at our stage in life, association, fellowship of like minded souls, of people who are sincerely endeavoring to take their spiritual life seriously and to actually live their life in a contemplative and prayerful way. And what I was thinking is that, we all in Krishna consciousness, there's book distribution, which is the front line, but there's those in the background who are praying for those on the front ground. So prayer actually, and intention and service in any way we can is all part of Team Prabhupada and Team Krishna. So, and it has value. And it doesn't have value because I'm doing it. It has value because Prabhupada has instructed us to always remember Krishna, always love Krishna, always serve Krishna. And he said that to me in the upper room in his quarters in Los Angeles in 1974, I think it was, when he was pleased with the deities. He said, always serve Krishna, remember Krishna, love Krishna, and this life will be perfect. And the next will be perfect, for you'll go back to Godhead. And that was not a message just for me. That was a message for all of us. That, if we serve Krishna, if we love Krishna, if we remember Krishna, and if we, are sincere, then actually this Krishna consciousness movement is a path to self-realization, to love of God. And everybody wants love, right? And this Prabhupada is giving us this opportunity to dive deeply into the ocean of Mahaprabhu's grace. And Sri Radha Krishna, he's given us a vehicle through our practice. That's the foundation, chanting the holy name, living a sattvic life, serving our deity, and also sharing where appropriate the glories that can uplift others, shining that out in the world, and doing it with humility and gratitude as an act of service, and with a deep heart, because Krishna is with everybody. He's in the heart of all. And, we get so covered by, our vision is so covered by our material outlook. But if we can actually just follow Prabhupada's example and see the urgency of uplifting society by sharing Harikatha and by distributing the books and by supporting each other, and even in the movement, it's really important. We're looking out all the time, but we have to look after each other, because actually that is preaching too, and that is actually nurturing, and that nurtures us to help each other. So is
No,
that
that
okay?
was very, very powerful. Thank you. Because it's very, I mean, it mustn't have been very easy, as a young person, like you mentioned, traveling, you had
It's
very
not easy.
short
Not easy.
notice about your husband taking sannyas and circumstances changing back and forth. So, and you also mentioned, you worked shifts, and how, apart from obviously having faith and the point that Prabhupada mentioned, always try and remember Krishna and love him, and also there's a saying, always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. So it's just obviously sometimes somebody looking at would say, it's easily said than done. If
It is.
particularly if somebody is going through a difficult time like you did, and is finding it difficult to establish that daily routine, what advice can you give for somebody to stay in the path of bhakti? Because either people go two ways, right? If somebody had encountered your situation, either you go closer to Krishna, which is what you did, which is absolutely inspiring, or you completely go the other way. So what can you give to a person probably who's on the sidelines thinking, do I go closer to Krishna, or do I just easy, I mean, it's easily said and done, do I
Okay.
just sack it off and just
No.
go the other way? Because your
Okay.
life would have been so much easier, wouldn't it, if you just gave up the practice, from
Yeah,
a
but
practical sense.
the practice was my lifeline, really. And the practice, and we're creatures of habit, aren't we? And habits actually help us to, good habits help us to stay on track. And I think Srila Prabhupada really taught us that the importance of having a schedule. And that actually keeps us anchored in our spiritual practice, to actually get up early and to do our japa, and to do it with intent, and to like we have our rituals. I have my same place I sit every day, and I pick up my bead bag and I chant, and I get up early, and and I found that was my survival, was to actually have a regulated program of, japa and reading, a little read. I'm not a big, intellectual or a philosopher. I'm more a prayer person. But and also, my deity worship is an anchor every morning, every evening. I put their jim jams on, don't I? And I put them to bed. And it's like the weave of the day goes, the path of the day goes by little moments that we make the connection. So in the morning, we get up, we bow our head, we dedicate ourselves. We take our shower, we chant our japa, we do our puja. We make some prasadam, we make an offering. And then what I found helpful is to have moments at Gayatri time, or moments when we pause throughout the day to make the connection, to remember Krishna. And it's just habits to do that. And just to kind of, when the mind is going, just turn the name on the breath in the mind. It works wonders. It's just like, it's the practice, and the practice isn't just morning do my japa and I can go and I go do my garden, or I do whatever I do. But it's about having the invitation that Prabhupada gave us to put Krishna in the center. So what does that mean? That means that we have to be disciplined. And you don't make any advancements. You can't actually, without effort, you can't actually move forward. So there has to be effort and discipline. But there's also has to be wonder. And new outfits, or new plants in the garden to be able to offer flowers to Krishna, or new recipes from Jamuna's cookbook, or it's just like, we're in incarnation. We have choices every day. Do I get up at 5, or do I get up at 6? Or do I get up at 4, or do I get up at 7? You have choices. And I found, for what works for me, is to have a regulated program, because then I feel that actually grounds me and makes me feel connected to the mystery. And also, Krishna upstairs, we look and we say, "Oh gosh, it's getting dark. He's not hasn't put his gym jams on yet." Yeah, no. So you have to have a time, and times change in morning and night, But it just works for me. But I think it's really important that we all are different. And we all approach Krishna consciousness differently, with different tools in our toolbox, different propensities. Some people might think, oh, she's mad, she just serves her deity and does her garden and, does a bit of this and that in the community. But actually, it works for me, and it helps me to remember Krishna. And I see also my room for improvements as well, because all of us are incarnation, and the practice helps us to actually focus on why we're here. And, the time is running out. I'm going to be 75 my next birthday. So, and I think, oh my God, there's a lot less behind than forward. So I have to, so the bell is ringing, get serious, girl. If you want to actually, meet your spiritual master in the spiritual world, you got to get serious. So I guess, and I have the luxury of being retired. So actually I don't have a child to look after. I've got my ashram, my little hermitage here where I can do my service. And I actually, what has been really wonderful, I'm a part of two reading groups, a Chaitanya Charitamrita reading group and a Bhagavatam reading group with some of my god sisters. And that has actually been a wonderful opportunity to study the books in association with other serious and loving companions. And that, so it's just, it's choices. It's my choices. It makes me feel I have my connection with my master is still alive and vibrant and challenging too. Because, it's not just rose colored glasses. Every day we have to, meet the challenge and meet the challenge of the mind more than anything. The mind can say, oh, you know, 10 minutes more sleep or, you know, but ultimately, if you get into a good habit and you pray and you support those that are doing frontline work, and, it seems to work from this moment in time. And it's also making a connection. When we chant the name, it's not just doing japa. When we're doing the name, remember in the old days, they used to say Krishna's dancing on your tongue. The name is our deity as well. And we have to really value the gift of the holy name and how that gift actually is revealing itself by practice and by invitation for practice. So, yeah, it helps to calm the mind. It brings one peace. It's not boring.
Thank you. I think I picked up the 2 points I really picked up, which I'm sure people at home would like to be helpfully reminded, because it's something I should remind myself, regularly. Is the 2 points you mentioned, the importance of effort and discipline. Sometimes it's you can't have one without the other. You can't think, oh, I'll make the effort but not be disciplined enough. It's like you said, life will always give us choices. Whether I wake up at 4 or 7, and it's just having that, making that effort, but also being disciplined enough. Because I
Just,
think that's one of the things with how you said Prabhupada set you the schedule, and we're all creatures of habit, but you set that habit with discipline that made you continue your practice despite the trials and tribulations you had to overcome. So I think it's a wonderful point, a very simple but very wonderful point that we often forget. How do you sustain anything? It's through effort and discipline, isn't it? But
effort
no,
and
thank you so
discipline
much.
and grace. And grace.
Grace.
Effort and discipline, but we have to actually capture, receive the grace that's being bestowed upon us. And, we're all mercy cases. Well, I'm a mercy case, I mean, it's by the grace of our Guru Maharaj, by the grace of Lord Krishna, that we are here today. And to be full of gratitude for that, and also just to really just to really understand that yes, we make an effort, but he empowers us to make that effort. We can't do it just, we have to really get to the place that we know that it's the medicine. This practice is our medicine for clearing all our anartas, all our negativities. And actually, as we clear, we actually wake up to, a deeper level of appreciation and gratitude.
Thank you so much, Mata, for sharing. One thing that I appreciated is it seems that you have molded your daily life, your daily schedule around Krishna, and I think that is wonderful because obviously in the spiritual world, everyone's schedule is evolving around Krishna, and I suppose if we want to prepare our consciousness for being eligible to enter the spiritual world, we've got to start living that way as well here already. So I found that really inspiring. And just reflecting back on what you shared earlier about, I think, the very challenging time in which your husband was told to take sannyas. Something which I also appreciated about what you shared is that I think that given quite resentful, towards other devotees involved, those who had suggested it and thought that that would have been the right step for him, etc. But it seemed that you accepted it, and then beyond just accepting it, then you went on and you did the needful to look after your son, and to still continue your devotional practice. I thought that was very powerful, and it was very, for me it was like very instructive, that it didn't seem that you didn't get caught up in like whose fault is this and who's to blame, and why is this happening
I
to
had a
me.
lot
It's
of
like
tears. I had a lot of
I can
tears.
imagine.
And I had to carry, and I
Mm,
still carry the challenge of
mm,
it. But also, I know that, Krishna actually gives us what we need to bring us closer to
mm,
Him. And,
mm,
I had to go through that.
mm,
But I also had to, we all have to find forgiveness.
mm,
We can't
mm,
actually move forward in life without forgiveness. And
mm,
forgiveness is not just forgiveness to those that made the decision, but actually forgiveness to ourselves for our feelings that
mm,
don't necessarily serve our highest good. Ultimately, we really pray for the highest good of all beings and our highest good as well. And
mm,
that highest good has we can look through many lenses exactly what
mm,
highest good how highest good looks, but
mm,
highest good is to be in connection with our practice, the mystery, and calling Krishna closer. And as you said, you were saying we're practicing. Our dear god sister Mandakini, who you must get on here one day to share her story. She's such a
mhm,
wealth of Prabhupada stories. And she always says we're practicing for the spiritual world and in our
mm,
lives. And that is, that attitude that actually the spiritual world is not somewhere. The spiritual world is present in the sense that
mm,
we integrate it, but through our practice, through our devotion, through our service, we and through the holy name, which is the bridge to the spiritual world. So it's
mm,
just actually taking the gifts and having fun with it. It's not just all, oh, you have to do this and you have to do that, and you have to do this. Be playful, be creative in our service, because that
mm,
gives us the juice, and that gives us, and that, you know, because relationships are not dry.
mm,
Relationships are of the heart. So, how do we get to the heart of a relationship?
mm,
By being present,
mm,
by being grateful, and by
mm,
being, Prabhupada used to say, that attention to detail. Mother Jamuna always would say that, it's always attention to detail. And what are the
mm,
gopis? What are Krishna's associates always looking for? They're looking to please the Lord. And how can they please the Lord? Um, by being present and listening.
Thank you so much again
You don't
for
listen.
thank you so much again for sharing. I think I read it once, but I couldn't find it again. Prabhupada did say that attention to detail is a sign of love. I really
Absolutely.
like that.
And Prabhupada always, after we cleaned the room, he'd go in like this and make sure. that we had done a good job. That he was teaching us that actually, we have to have skill, and skill is in practice. Skill is learned. We come in with some skill from past lives, but skill is learned, and we have to have good heart and clear mind and a willing spirit. Yeah.
Now, one thing I think that stands out throughout your whole story, this is golden line, and that is your strong faith. And I think many times you mentioned that you continuously build the faith through deepening your relationship both with Srila Prabhupada and with Krishna. So can you share with us, how can we do this? How can we continuously deepen our faith in Guru and Krishna?
Practice. By practicing every day, by practicing it and listening and following the Shastra, following the path of those that have gone beyond us, reading the lives of the saints who are in our lineage and who are teaching us through their stories, and by prayer, by asking, and also by the companion, the fellowship of devotees who are serious and eager and for a taste of Krishna's service. It's infectious when one is in the association of someone who is eager to please the Lord and to serve the Lord and to serve others. Because we can't be misers, we have to actually share together and help each other to draw, because we're learning from each other. I mean, I'm today here, I've been 50 years, but you girls have your own spiritual practice. You have your realizations, and you've knocked my door and said, please come and share with us. But actually, we're all in this together. And the hierarchy of old devotees, new devotees, ultimately, we all have Paramatma, we all have Krishna in our hearts, and we all have a ticket home if we actually do the work. Yeah.
That's a beautiful image. It reminds me, like, if you have a train ticket to go somewhere, you just have to do the work to get to the train station and get on that train. And similar,
Yeah.
we have that ticket back to Godhead.
And we have
just
the grace of the saints, the grace of our dear devotees that are not in incarnation with us right now, but are our well-wishers in spirit. And we have the grace of our master and the lineage. And we have the grace of our fellow community. And it's just like we have to be open to that grace and be humbled and ask, please, Krishna, help me, to love you and show me how to love you, and what do you want today, and be in dialogue and listen. It's so easy to be so loud and busy, but actually a lot of spiritual life is chanting, and it's listening to the name. And it's allowing that name to course through our veins, and allowing that name to bless us, our cellular system, and allow that name to project out into the world and heal and uplift society. Because, that name is a beacon of light. And the name, actually, Krishna's name is our ticket. Yeah. Mother Jamuna, when she left, I was told she had her hand in her japa bag. And I thought, how perfect. She left the planet with her hand in her japa bag. I thought that was just such an amazing teaching, and really shows that the power of the name, and how we can prioritize that in our lives. If we have the call, if it's our way, it works for me.
Thank you, Mother. It was so beautiful. And also, you mentioned a lot of things, how we sustain the practice, sustain you, following the path of bhakti. And you mentioned it's practice, reading the scriptures of the saints and chanting and having that, making that effort and having discipline. So we covered a lot of things, but you also, another thing you mentioned from the beginning is your association. I know even before the session we were talking and you said you still have, your weekly reading groups with your god sisters, and I know they're all rallying up for you behind the scenes and supporting you. And I think that's something we really forget, the importance of sadhu sangha and community. So what impact has sadhu sangha or for forming that community, played in your journey in bhakti, practicing bhakti for the past 50 years, and what can we learn about perhaps the importance of forming a community, because it can be a bit difficult, particularly people who don't live very close to large communities. So what advice or what tips can you give to people to form that community, because you always mention how important it's been, being team
Essential.
Prabhupada, so how can we develop that community, and gain that association really?
And I actually, again, it's a discipline to reach out to others and and to communicate with others and to share our hearts. In that wonderful book, the Upadesha Rita, it share. One of the exchanges of love is to share one's mind and to share prasadam, and we actually support each other, and we challenge each other, and that has been really the bedrock of why I'm here today, of my deep friendships in the Krishna consciousness movement. And that doesn't mean I don't have friends in my local community who, do yoga and are maybe on a Buddhist path or a Christian path, and they're still part of my life, and they respect me for who I am, and I respect and love them for who they are. And I share prashadam with them. They love samosas. And we do some gardens together and like that. So it's not just an insular experience, but it's just like what you carry with you, you share, and you share it at a heart level as appropriate to your audience. And within the Bhaktivedanta Manor and Soho Street community, I have deep affection for so many of my god brothers and god sisters. They know the backstory. Some were there when I went through my challenges, and we've maintained these friendships. And sometimes when I was working, there were gaps when I was just doing all the shift work and stuff, and I stepped back a bit. But it wasn't stepping into the wilderness, it was keeping the tent, but it was that you had to do what you had to do to manage your livelihood. So actually, devotee association, fellowship of devotees, community of friends, of like-minded friends, and those that are serious in actually moving and taking Prabhupada's lessons actually feed my soul, and actually is probably one of the reasons I'm here with you today, is that these deep friendships are family, and the devotees are a family, and wherever you go in the world, you meet devotees, and that is, one of the huge gifts of Prabhupada setting up the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. He knew that actually, when he was gone, we would help each other. He gave us the template of the program, and he gave us the books, and he gave us each other. And that is a huge, huge gift. I can't stress it enough. And in every faith tradition, sadhu sangha, satsang, whatever they call it, fellowship, is the bedrock that actually helps us in our humanity to support each other as we move through incarnation. And yes, I can't stress it more how dear my friends are to me in in teaching me and in allowing me some service to them too. It's reciprocation. Krishna consciousness is, a personal religion, and we're aiming to have a personal relationship with Krishna and Radha and Mahaprabhu, and we're aiming, and we learn that through our association with each other. Okay.
No, thank you. That was wonderful because, like you said, those relationships are pivotal in terms of not just keeping you in the right path, but you also mentioned, staying practical. When I think when it's
Absolutely.
when troubles come, that's when you really need that. Like you said, see people who are willing to or take, bhakti seriously, so they can kind of spur you on, rather than just not help you. So I suppose the importance of devotee association that's played in your part, I'm sure we all have a thing or two to learn from.
Yes,
Certainly.
and discernment is important in friendships too. We have to choose our friends that will support our values. And there's so many, and we have to be honest with ourselves, and some people are closer and some aren't so close, but we have to really be discerning. Especially, we don't want to get too distracted. We don't want to get distracted at all. So we have to, in order to really make progress, Prabhupada, he gave us our community and our outreach, and that is a wide outreach because there are so many friends of Krishna. Yeah. So that outreach is important, but also ultimately we're on our own. We come in on our own and we leave on our own. So we just ultimately have to do the work and not be too distracted, not be distracted from the purpose of we've taken birth for. And that is actually a discipline.
Thank you so much, Mata, for everything you've shared. To conclude, I had one question. You mentioned several times how important prayer is to you. Earlier, you were saying that you chant and you read a little, but you're not so much of a scholar. You're more into prayer. So I was wondering if you could share something about, when you pray, is it a matter of more just reciting the prayers of the previous acharyas, or do you write prayers, or do you have a specific way in which you pray? Because I'm very curious about this way of, because we know it's one of the 9 main devotional processes, but I'm curious more about your personal practice of prayer.
Well, of course, we're all individuals again. And of course, I chant the prayers that we have been taught to chant. But also, I just sit in the presence of the divine in my little temple upstairs. And I just offer myself to my Krishna. And I ask for, I have a list of prayers that I pray for people who are ill or who are in challenging situations. So I just kind of put their names at the feet of my Lord in my mind and ask for that they might receive the strength and the blessing they need for their incarnational journeys, to heal them as appropriate if it's His will, and then and so prayer is not just asking Krishna for something mundane. It's just being in the presence of the divine as a watchful participant in his darshan. And so prayer is not just words. Prayer is actually being in the presence of Krishna and just listening to his guidance and will, and asking him how I could be of service, and listening if I get some inspiration at that time. Also, we chant, of course, the Mangal Arti prayers, and we chant the prayers to the great saints. But actually, sometimes the prayers just become rote prayers, and we don't. And you're saying your prayers, and you're not even hearing your prayers. So it's really important that that we're attentive to our prayers, and we allow those prayers to be embraced within us and to go out into the world as an act of service for uplifting society and sharing the grace. So prayer is a personal thing, and we all have different approaches to it, but it's not just about chanting rote prayers. It's about asking, it's just dialoguing with the mystery, with the divine, and allowing him to come closer to us, inviting him to come closer, if he so desires.
Thank you so
Oh,
much.
is that okay?
Yes, the way you describe prayer, saying certain words, but it's like being in a certain state of consciousness, and it seems that that state of consciousness is being aware of Krishna and being in that dialogue with him, understanding what is he wanting from
Yeah.
you. So that's
It's
beautiful.
personal. It's personal philosophy, and so prayers are not just rote prayers. And we read Srila Prabhupada's wonderful prayer on the Jaladuta when he was pouring out his heart. You make me dance, you make me dance. So in the Vaishnava lineage, there are so many wonderful prayers that can touch our souls, and poems, Bhakti Vinod Thakur, so many wonderful poems, and the books, the song book, all the songs of the Vaishnavacharyas are wonderful prayers. So those prayers and the singing, the bhajan prayers is one type of prayer. Another type of prayer is just to ask Krishna to come closer and to sit in the presence in silence, and just turning the mantra in our mind and allowing that to bathe us with his grace. And that just works for me, but it's not something that, is instructed or taught, but it's just, if we have to love Krishna, if we want to love Krishna, then Krishna, we ask him to teach us how to love him. And so if the focus is on being interactive, and that's not sentimentality, that's being in a loving relationship, then we humbly ask our Guru Maharaj to empower us to be of service and to understand what we need in a moment in time to please.
Thank you so much, Mother. Earlier, you said something which I found, it was a beautiful image. You said that when we ask, we allow the doors of grace to open. You were saying we've got to ask, Krishna's help, and we've got to ask in prayer. And I really like that image. If we ask, that is allowing the doors of grace to open. So thank you so much for being with us tonight. It was really a blessing having your presence. I hope that many more devotees will, watch this video and be able to to have your
Out.
association.
I'm not a public speaker, and this is not this is quite intimate, to share the story. But actually, I know Srila Prabhupada, he wants us to share the story with others and to encourage each other, because ultimately we're just passing through, and we can't waste this human form of life. So we have an opportunity to share together today. So thank you for your invitation, and I hope what I shared with you was useful and brings you closer to the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada and our Guru Maharaj. and your Guru Maharajas, whoever, your aspiring Guru Maharajas. And, there's so many guides, guardians, and well wishers who actually support us in our devotional life. And, when we offer our obeisances, we remember and we actually are humbled by all the grace that is present, and that will give us will fortify us when times are challenging. We have the help of all our well wishers. So thank
Thank you,
you.
Mother. It was beautiful. And also, you mentioned, in answer to the last question about prayer, making things personal. I think that's what's more, I think that more than anything else, I hope viewers at home look at, your personal story. And I'm sure lots of people out there can relate to elements of it, so that, keeping things almost true, because Krishna knows your personal circumstances, and it's just how you tailor your practice according to your circumstances. Because you said, sometimes when things were tough, 4 rounds had to be, because it's just making sure that you're not looking to emulate or almost copy somebody else's journey, but you keep your journey personal, and your prayer time is your personal time with Krishna. Because I remember just an encounter a couple of weeks ago with Mahavishnu Swami, and I asked him the question, because he's such an exalted personality. There's so much energy about him, so he can engage the normal lay people. So I asked him the question, Maharaj, if you don't have your sort of personality and the presence, how can we engage people in Krishna consciousness? And he said, stop, Maharaj, used to him and said, people should stop copying me. Everybody has their own gift. And his answer was essentially, people are asking me about my hats, and he said, oh, they should go make their own hats. And he said something along those lines, and he mentioned the exact point you mentioned, that having the importance of having that personal journey with Guru and Krishna. And I think that was if I took anything, that was the most important thing I took, apart from obviously your incredible journey. But I think having that journey that is personal to you, that suits your circumstance, and obviously seek the grace of other Vaishnavas, and have that effort and discipline despite whatever trials and tribulations you may come across in life. So, thank you so much for all your words of wisdom, Mother. And it was an utter delight and privilege to be in your presence. And no, thank you so much for your time. And
And
I'm pretty sure, I can assure you, people at home would have taken so many golden nuggets of wisdom than you could ever imagine. So, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us today. And we'll see you soon on our next episode, number 11, in a couple of weeks' time. So, stay tuned. We will be releasing details of a very exciting speaker in the next couple of days or weeks. So, thank you for joining us. Hope everybody has a lovely rest of the evening. Hare Krishna.